Thanks, Daniel. So who is CNA? CNA is a big fashion retailer in Mexico with 75 plus stores across the country that has been a Teradata customer for more than 6 years. And they started on-prem with us and moved to cloud 3 years ago. CNA has just joined with another fashion retailer that is called Cuidado con el Perro that has over 200 stores. And with this, CNA Mexico and Cuidado con el Perro will become one of the most fashion retailers with most presence in Mexico. This union will bring new business cases and challenges that our technology must support, and moving their data to VantageCloud Lake will allow to fulfill. This migration is planned for next year, 2025, and will allow both companies to share data, but not sharing compute process. Teradata and Anomatic has helped them, CNA, with some business cases over a year. So what were the business requirements that CNA asked us to solve? Protect PII and financial data. All this kind of information must be encrypted within VantageCloud, meaning this in transit and in rest. PCI compliance. All data from credit cards that CNA issue must be encrypted. Quick implementation. This was an important one because regulations give CNA short time for this requirement to be completed and working. So how CNA visualized the solution? Data becoming from different type of sources have to pass from a tool that reads and transforms data into encrypted data that will keep encrypted in VantageCloud. But when users with the necessary rights query sensitive data or access dashboards with sensitive data, this same tool had to back or decrypt this information to show it clear. It's a pretty standard requirement, and there are many ways to solve it, but Anomatic was the right choice to accomplish this. Jay is going to give us more detail into this. Jay?
That has got to be one of the nicest, simplest pieces of architecture drawing I've ever seen. Hi, I'm Jay Irwin. I direct the Teradata Center for Enterprise Security, which is one of the teams in the Corporate Information Security Office at Teradata. I have a group of architects who work with me in our full stack security. So we're used to looking at a very deep level about all things security in Teradata, things that consume data in Teradata, things that affect or work with Teradata, and including security products that help protect the data of our customers at Teradata. And so I'm here to, of course, with my security hat on, to talk about security requirements and features of data protection, and in particular of our partner Anomatic. So just a quick review. I hope this part is not boring, but a quick review of the data technologies that make up most of the market in data protection. First, column level encryption, which protects data in database tables in columns. It's reversible and it doesn't preserve the format, so it's a big data field. Column level tokenization, a little different, slightly slower, protects data in the same way in the database columns in tables. It is also reversible, and it is by nature format preserving. Third, format preserving encryption looks exactly like tokenization. I'd say you can't tell them apart. It protects data in the same way. It is reversible and format preserving. Then there's data masking. And there's also a point to why I'm going through all these different names. Data masking obfuscates data in tables or in the semantic layer. And there's two kinds. There's dynamic, or DDM, dynamic data masking, which is reversible. And that can be done with encryption or with tokenization, many different ways it can be done. And there's static or non-reversible data masking, which means you take a sample of data, you hash it, and it's permanently what it has become. And you throw it away when you're done. Okay? Next is transparent database encryption. And we also have a partner that offers that solution. And that solution protects the file system volumes that hold data in our database. We call them P disks. And they form part of our file system. And it prevents somebody from attacking through the operating system through encryption key policies so that that vector cannot be attacked. What it doesn't do is protect the data at the field level, like the systems we've been talking about above. And finally, the group I'm here to talk about, Anonymatic, has Poly-Anonymization. This is a brand new technology which protects sensitive record attributes. That's a key word. It doesn't have to protect columns. It doesn't have to protect rows. It protects sensitive data attributes in a secure vault that is not inside of the Teradata database, replacing them with an intelligent Poly-ID to use for queries. And the difference here from anonymization is that these Poly-IDs are intelligent. I believe Matthew calls them a multi-value non-identifying identifier, which is a mouthful, but that's exactly a factual explanation of what Poly-IDs are. Now, why did I bring up all of these technologies? That's because every time we get in a conversation with account teams, customers, and others, we'll be given requirements right off the bat. Well, we need to mask our data. We need to encrypt our data. We need to tokenize our data. And what we need to learn is, what are we trying to do? And then once we understand what we're trying to do, then we pick the technology and we narrow things down a little bit. And so a lot of these terms are used by people very loosely, and they shouldn't be. These are very specific terms with very specific meanings. So that's why I went over it. Now I would like to go over the PII vault security model. The PII vault of Anonymatic is the central core of the application. And it's arguable that this is the most secure data in the organization after data is put in here. So when a customer decides to use this vault and put data in here, it can ETL the data in, meaning the sensitive data only, using a service called Privacy ETL. Or if the data is already in Teradata, it can bring it down from where it is and put it in the vault. That's what happens. And so how is it secured, though? The first line, the first level, the black level, is that it inherits all of the controls of the customer's data center or other place where they put this vault. This vault can be put in an on-prem data center. You can have more than one vault as well, by the way. Or this vault can also be put in a VPC. So it can be used in a hybrid cloud-prem situation, and there can be multiple vaults. The second layer of control is they call insider immunity, which I refer to as insider threat protection. This is an option available on demand in the product, which allows the system to be configured to alert on certain insider activities if they occur in the database or with the use of the Anonymatic application. And if an administrator would want to be warned of these activities, then this is what this is for. The third level is PII separation. This is where Privacy ETL process comes in. If the data is coming in to the vault first thing, and it hasn't been in Teradata yet, the non-PII data is going to go through the regular ETL process with which an automatic will work. The PII sensitive data attributes will go in through privacy ETL, which is a specialty type of ETL that serves that data. That separation of PII puts the PII record attributes into this vault. Now, they haven't been protected yet, but they're about to be. The next thing is Poly-Anonymization. Poly-Anonymization is a newly patented process that takes the data and creates, for the sensitive attributes, a special record identifier called a poly ID. Let's just call it a string. This string is important because it is both intelligent and it cannot be brute forced individually and taken back to the original data value like encryption can. You know, encryption being a mathematically reversible process, a poly ID cannot be brute force attacked and reversed. So with that, you can argue pretty strongly that a poly ID would withstand a quantum attack when quantum computers become common, and that's important for the future. The next, so every record that is a PII attribute gets a poly ID, and also a poly ID goes into the Teradata database. And that's what the table gets. The table doesn't get the sensitive table. The table gets the poly ID. That's an important distinction because those two IDs are not the same. Then the next level is AES, full database encryption, which surrounds the PII Vault database as volume level encryption. And it's strong encryption with AES 256. The next layer is data sundering, which is a brand new concept and is patented also by an automatic. Data sundering means literally ripping the data apart and making it unrecognizable. It's not the same as encryption, it's different. If I were to put a name on it, I'd call it next generation tokenization because it has some of the features of what a visioned next generation tokenization algorithm might look like. But it's called data sundering. Sunder is biblical. I think it's 1 Corinthians where they talk about what God has put together, let no man put asunder. And that's the same word. Asunder means to rip apart. So they rip apart the clear text data that's gone into the vault to be protected. And so the data doesn't just go into the vault and sit there. It goes into the vault and gets protected, but it can be retrieved. The next level of protection is Teradata's own role-based access control. Users who are going to be allowed to selectively re-identify data from the vault still have role right restrictions, and then they're going to have to abide by them. So not just anybody can access the vault. And lastly, there are 3 keys that are vendor supplied or can be bring your own from the customer. They can all be easily rotated by the customer. There's the volume level key, the secrets key, and the data sunder key. What do we like about this solution? It's 100% PII-free table data in Teradata. It really knocks a lot of questions and issues out of the conversation. What else do we like? We like that it has many use cases: cloud migration, clean rooms, loyalty, data for marketing, test data management, data sharing, data augmentation, and many more use cases that make the idea of data protection and data usage compatible together at 100%. So you get to use 100% of your data and all of its value. We like that Poly-Anonymization also encrypts, masks, and smooths as additional augmenting technologies. And finally, we like the idea that the UDFs that Anomatic use are 26,700% faster than legacy UDFs. Now, I'm going to ask Matt to explain that as I invite him to come to the stage, and I appreciate you listening to my droll about the security model.
Excellent, thank you, Jay. All right, as I was looking forward to this presentation and knowing that I was going to talk about something that I've lived and breathed and designed and developed for the last 8 years, I knew I had nothing to be worried about, nothing to be nervous about. And then Daniel talks about how this is all fashion-based, and there's no one who's more of a geek than I am. My wife still has to dress me before I leave the house. So let's leave that aside and get to what we do, who we are. So when we were preparing for this, one of the things that Teradata said is, you know, most people probably have never heard of you. So give them a little bit of background. So fair enough. 2016 is when this journey started. And we were asked to combine HIPAA and FERPA data for the Los Angeles Unified School District. Over a dozen different healthcare service providers wanted to share their HIPAA-protected data with all the detailed academic data from Los Angeles Unified School District and draw the conclusion between the healthcare services provided to students and their academic performance, something nobody has ever been able to do before. When we looked at the different technologies that could protect data, just like, it's not gonna work. No encryption is going to last 50 years, and this data had to stay protected for at least that long. So we invented Poly-Anonymization, and we realized that it overcomes all the shortcomings of all the existing technologies that are used to protect and secure data. In 2019, Poly-Anonymization went live, and has been live with over a dozen different independent organizations, all with their own transactional systems, sharing detailed data at the individual level, completely anonymized, all combined at the individual level by an automatic software. Sounds impossible, sounds like it's magic. It's one of our capabilities. And when the pandemic hit and things kind of changed, that's when we took this technology, knowing that it was going to be applicable across every country, every industry, any company that needs or deals with personal data can use this because their operations can become safer, cheaper, they can iterate better, they can get to market faster, because you just don't have to worry about protecting the privacy, protecting the security, because that's what PII as a service does for you. So we started a relation with Teradata. We had a shared vision, making as much data available to as many people for as many purposes as possible. And so it's been a great partnership. So it's not a mistype at the top there. Our philosophy is no front page headlines. When you use our technology to protect your data, you pretty much have zero likelihood that any sort of a breach, any exposure will land you on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Simply because while you can get full value out of all your data, you just never have anybody's identity in it. So we have built very specific and high performance capabilities into our product for the Teradata platform. Some of those go with some of the patents that we have. We're very proud of these. These are revolutionary in the data privacy and data protection space. And they provide really key capabilities that simply make it simple and easy for you to use and to protect data that today you get restricted from being able to use. We talk about the use cases. Technology is fine. Data protection is fine. The difference is that we will protect data so that you may use it for other things. The end game of having encrypted or tokenized data in your database is not the end game. It's being able to use it for AI, being able to use it for advanced analytics, being able to share data, be able to monetize your data, be able to do dynamic or static masking. All these things suddenly become very easy to implement once you have used the poly-anonymization. And what impact, we always get asked, what impact does this have on Teradata, on the speed of my queries? Basically none. So it's a containerized solution, implemented usually on Docker, outside of Teradata. We have the integration. It can be a very low lift. That's us, but let's talk about what's going on with CNA Mexico. So once we signed the contract with CNA, we delivered to them some of the additional capabilities they wanted. They put it in test. 2 weeks later, it was fully operational. Like Geraldo said, they wanted and they needed to get it in production fast, and they were able to quickly implement our privacy ETL solution, take data out of their sales systems, out of the transactional systems, clean, secure all the data in transit, put it into Teradata. Everything was transformed and clean for them there. They also have another system, their point of sale system, which already encrypted and made PCI compliant the data that it collected. The way that we implemented it, this is what they needed, was for us to be 100% compatible with the way that they did it. So when it comes out, it doesn't matter where it came from, it's all transparent. So they used Tableau for that reporting. We just tied it all together. The privacy ETL. The privacy ETL is something that we built pretty much to make it easy to consume our services. It's moving data from A to B and implementing the data privacy and data security protections you need as things move. It can move from a transactional system to Teradata, Teradata to a transactional system, to a partner system, go from Teradata to an individual user's app. You can have a completely free, PII-free database in Teradata, but a customer brings up their app, looks at their profile, they see their name, their address, their phone number, their email. It's all right there. It is totally transparent. It's just that you don't have the PII there, so your governance is much lower. All the restrictions you have on giving people access in your organization, giving them access to your data, much, much lower. You can really kind of move along very quickly. And it's very simple and easy to use. Jay mentioned the in-database UDFs. So they can be called directly from native Teradata SQL. You can utilize the capabilities for CNA. They can encrypt data, they can decrypt data, you can re-identify data. You can pretty much do them all at the speed and scalability of your nodes and your amps. And as he said, I rounded it up on this slide, 27 times faster than legacy UDFs. So in addition to the fact that if you need to search for data that is protected, if you use column level encryption, if you use tokenization, you basically have a table scan. And you've got to find the record with those values. That does not exist with the Anonymax solution. This is why CNA likes our solution so much, because you can go directly to the record for that person, get the data you need, and it performs at Teradata scale and Teradata speed. My partner, Neil Heller, is right back there, blue shirt, he's got his arm up. We're gonna be here all the way through. If you have any questions, you can find either of us. But we do have a couple more minutes, so if you'll indulge me, I just wanted to tell you a little bit more about what we do, because CNA is using us for PCI compliance and for encryption, but the poly-anonymization is the real power of our platform. So the question is, and this is one of the things Hillary talks about, is superior business outcomes. What are your challenges? What are your goals? What are you trying to do to get superior business outcomes out of your data? Do you want to train your AI, right? Big message here. Do you just need to get more data available to more people for analytics, for machine learning? Are you trying to do dynamic data masking to control, a developer or report writer wants to be able to use production data, but they shouldn't be able to see the actual customer's names? Data sharing and data monetization are such huge opportunities. So many of you here have huge amounts of data that your partners and other organizations would pay you for the ability to tell them something about their customers or their prospects. You need to control what is delivered. You don't want to make all your detailed records available to them. They write a query, it's a Cartesian product, your CPU usage went through the roof. But you can answer a question for them with complete security, privacy, and obscurity. This is what we're working on with a POC for one of your compatriots. They want to make sure that they can deliver that sort of insight to their partners without even know who the partner asked about. And so that's something that we can provide here. If you move data across borders, geopolitical borders, data sovereignty, right to be forgotten, data retention, all taken care of, all native. And of course, if you want to move from on-prem to cloud, and you can't because of the data privacy, that's just taken care of. PII as a service just solves that issue for you. Then the question is, where's the data coming from, or where does it have to go to? These are the things you want to take care of. This is where your data is or is going to be. Now, if you're using encryption or tokenization, in the middle there is a brick wall. Maybe it's a chain link fence, but it's there to make things difficult. With Anonymatic, we have the platform that allows you to get from here to there simply, easily, and far more secure than what you have today. So I just want to take a quick little walkthrough and give you an illustration of how something that we like to call a PII-free data clean room works. So you've got data, structured, unstructured, doesn't really matter. You've got that data off to the side. It's colored red because it's identified, it's risky. This is stuff when people in your organization come to you and say, I got this idea, I would like data to do X. And there's all sorts of approvals and requests, and do you have to do this? And if the answer is not no, then they have to sign NDAs, and you got to build protections around it. It's all that mess right there. However, with Privacy ETL, connects to that source, gets the business data they need, poly-anonymizes it in transit, drops the completely de-identified according to your rules and according to the prevention or the third-party re-identification prevention measures you want to put in place, and drops it into VantageCloud Lake, your cloud database, wherever it might be where they can get access to it. No NDAs are required. If that data gets exposed, you don't have any breach notification obligations because there's no identity of your customers in there. They can then use ClearScape Analytics, whatever else they need to come up with whatever insights that can drive your business. Those insights are individualized, highly personalized, down to the person. You just don't know in here who that person is. As Jay mentioned, it's just an unintelligible string that says that this is that same person without knowing who that person is. So that's all great. You can come up with those conclusions, but then how do you act upon it? You act upon it by selectively re-identifying it. So based on the controls and the roles there, selective re-identification will take that, bring it back out, deliver it to where it can be acted upon. This can bring it back to your transactional system, back to your Teradata system. It could be re-identify it with a first name and an email address and send it to Marketo. So it could be, blast out the emails and the targeted offers. That's the full round trip that just made making data available to anyone in your organization for any of those purposes quicker, cheaper, easier, far more secure. So quick little quote from Renee, who wished he could be here, the customer from CNA Mexico. We're really sorry he couldn't, but we're very grateful that we're still able to tell their story. And now the three of us are available for any questions, should you have them.
Before, if you have a question, please put your hand up. Kimberly will get a microphone to you, and just while the microphone's on its way, I obviously have the initial question just because I have a microphone already. When we look at this poly-anonymization, I feel like we see a lot of sort of things about it, and we know that it's different, and we know that I feel uncomfortable because I'm now between two security people, and we all know that security people will kill you if they ever actually have to tell you anything. Tell us, how does this work with all of this compliance stuff that we've got? Because I have HIPAA and PCI kind of things and high trust kind of things that I'm trying to deal with my customers. Does this work for that? Does this kind of solve those sorts of problems? And why don't we start with yourself?
Sure, happy to do that. And you know, it's one of the greatest compliments is when we explain what we do to someone and they go, that's just so elegant. It's just so clear and simple. And the answer to that question falls under that category because in almost every case, now we are not attorneys, so take this to your attorneys and you verify it with them and they'll be like, what? Never heard of this before. But still, ask them the question. Almost all of those regulations do not apply to data that has been sufficiently de-identified. So if you remove, like we did for the dozen plus healthcare providers, all the identifying value from that HIPAA data, then the data is no longer governed by HIPAA. If you do this in France and you sufficiently de-identify that data and you want to bring it back to the US, it no longer is subject to GDPR because it's not identified. It doesn't mean it isn't useful. It doesn't mean you can't act upon it. It just means it doesn't have anybody's private information. Jay, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, other than the fact that all of the regulations that you see worldwide, whether it's California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, CPRA now, or GDPR, or LGPD in Brazil, or FISC in Japan, or I don't know, we could think of some others. The Schrems ruling in Europe supplementing GDPR, saying no to unencrypted transborder data flows of data. All of those and more, there are more, all of those regulations define the data that is regulated. And always that data, there's a few business exceptions, but in most of those laws, it says this shall apply to the data of subjects of the European Union or residents of California, so on. And so, in other words, it applies to the personal data of people. It's essentially the same as the HIPAA 19 is, with slight variations. And if you presented to an auditor or a country data regulator or a state data regulator a data set in your data platform as a customer that did not contain any of that data because it was poly-anonymized, you could say, essentially I have a PII-free data platform. I have a PII-free database, and you will get some relief in the audit because you've reduced the scope of it. Now, nobody can say what that reduction will be except the auditor, but it could be very substantial.
Right, thank you. And just real quick on that, the Poly-ID, the Poly-Anonymous Identifier, and if this doesn't prove that I'm a geek, nothing does. Love coming up with these new words. That multi-value non-identifying identifier, that value has one value in the PII vault. It has another value in Teradata. If you want to share that data with a third party or send it someplace else, it can have a third, fourth, fifth, sixth value. And what that does is it stops anybody from being able to put data together when you don't want them to. That's why it's a multi-value non-identifying identifier. We had a question.
Just in the front here.
Can you talk about the performance and scaling when it comes to using, I would call that a middleman, if you will, especially if, let's say, you have 1 terabyte of data to, let's say, 200 terabyte of data over time. What's the thought behind the architecture? Does it run on separate, like a CPU farm that can scale? So can you just talk about that?
Absolutely, and it's a great question. If everyone didn't hear it, it's what's the performance impact? And for no great surprise, we always get that question from every Teradata customer. So the answer is you may have 100 terabytes, you may have 200 terabytes of data, but when you look at that data, it is massive volumes of transactions for a relatively low number of people. You may have 10 million customers, you may have 100 million customers. and you're going to have terabytes of data about those customers. But when you boil it down, and I did this last night with a very large bank, they said we have 100 terabytes. And we kind of did some math right there while we were having a cocktail. It came down to somewhere between 4 and 8 gig of individual identifying values. You count up MATT for MAT. That's once, no matter how many MATs you have in your database. All the ID numbers. There's only so many numbers that go into a phone number, a zip code, a social security number. All that is condensed inside the PII vault in an extremely highly efficient, ex-Netflix engineered data repository. So your 100 terabytes may just be somewhere, let's say at most 10 gig in our system. So we can get to it extremely fast. So you have a query that is running and you go against 100 million records and you're going to come up to some sort of result. You don't need to re-identify 100 million records. You're going to drill those down, you're going to aggregate them, you're going to condense them, you're going to come up with a result that may be 10,000, it may be 100,000, but it's not 100 million. And then when those are the only values you need to re-identify. Now your customer profile today may have 15 values, but when you want to re-identify it, very rarely would you want to re-identify all 15 values for all 10,000 customers. It may just be first name and email address. Right? So the amount of work we have to do is minuscule to, fractionally minuscule to anything else that you are doing. And so we can be highly performant so that you can implement our solution to where you've removed those values from your Teradata database, but you've implemented one of our UDFs, as Jay was referring to, so that the result set from the query to your view is exactly the same it is today. So none of your downstream systems, none of your applications, nothing else changes. And no one's going to notice any performance. It is highly tuned to do this.
In no example that we have been able to think of, could you say have to submit a query that would re-identify an entire column, which in many instances with other technologies is required. And of course, when you re-identify an entire column, that's an all-amp operation in Teradata, as you already know, with a full table scan. And there is no scenario that we have been able to come up with where we used anywhere near that kind of resources through our optimizer and parsing engine.
It'll come on.
Does the vault sit inside Teradata, or where does the actual this mapping sits? It sits outside. Sure. Where does that sit?
So we are not currently approved to reside inside the Teradata environment. What our customers do today is they will typically provision a sufficiently sized virtual machine. Typically somewhere between 8 and 16 cores, 16 to 64 gig of RAM, high-speed disk, and that's all you need to be able to support most customers. Right? The really big ones, we can scale horizontally and horizontally and vertically. One vault can actually contain 10, 20 different sub-vaults, each of them that are processing each request in a round robin. And if you need to, we can actually replicate those so that you don't have not one of those, but 2, 4, 5, 20 of them, all being able to satisfy whatever demands you have. So our Netflix guys were very good at scaling. Surprise, surprise. Any other questions?
Bob.
One of the common challenges that our customers have is finding the, finding the PII data that has to be de-identified. Do you have any experience in helping customers track down PII to actually anonymize?
Great question. Can we help you find the PII to anonymize? One of the tools that we have, which is nearing release, we call our test data automation. And we also are, it's going to be the forebearer of our cloud migration assistant. What you do basically is you point it to a database. It'll read every table. It'll look at every column. If you have a data dictionary or if you have any sort of naming standards, it will go against all of those and it'll bring you a concise set and say, here are the columns and here are the tables that we think, where we have found something. And then you can very easily search for and look for and preview values from other things in your database so that you can say, aha, here's one I need to take care of, or yeah, these are all the things. And what you can do then is it will automatically generate all the bits and pieces, primarily what we call a schema, which is all the metadata where you tell us what you want us to do when we're protecting the data. Do you want us to poly-anonymize it? Do you want us to encrypt it? Do you want to smooth the values, prevent re-identification? What are the things that you want us to do? It's all in a codeless schema that a business user can define for their, how they want those rules to be. The Test Data Automation Assistant will do all of those, generate all of those, so that if every day, every week, you want to take a snapshot of your database, move it over to non-production, click the button, we'll go into that database and we will statically mask all the values so it's irreversible. And one time, you run it on Monday, Matt Fleck becomes Bob Smith. You run it on Tuesday, it's John Simmons. Wednesday, I'm Peter Clark, right? So there's no ability for anyone to kind of learn who somebody might be. And that's the sort of thing that we provide to simply make it really easy and simple for you to not only consume our services, but to simplify your own lives.
Any other questions?
Yeah, in the back right there.
You mentioned earlier about it has to sit on its own VM, right?
It is a Linux container, a Docker container. So put it wherever you like. It can go on bare metal, it can go on a VM, just can support Linux or even on Windows. We have
but any Linux, so say for instance I have a Red Hat on a Power 9, IBM Power 9. Would it work on that? Because we've had some issues with working on that product with Teradata. So we have our Teradata boxes that run on SUSE, but if I need to utilize it with Red Hat on Power 10, I apologize.
Yeah, I can't answer that question directly. I can say that if Docker operates on there, then we should be fine. I haven't found anything where you can run Docker on a box or an OS that doesn't just automatically run us, because it abstracts all those things for us. But it does not have to be the same environment that Teradata is in. Right? It is separate and today it's separate and distinct. You create a VM, you put it on bare metal, and you arrange and approve the networking between the two. And then we're off over here doing what we do. Teradata is over here doing everything that it does. We have pioneered, and we actually have the trademark on the term PII as a service. So all the trouble that PII causes you, like identity management, who wants to write their own identity management anymore? You just use us to take care of this problem for you. And then you can concentrate on all the other stuff. Does that answer your question as well as it could?
Good enough. I can go with that. So that works for me. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. There's another in the back.
We'll take one last question in the back there.
And if you want to talk to us afterwards, we'll hang around for any other questions.
Yes, thanks. So I just wanted to ask you, you said earlier that you're not approved for deployment on Teradata. So is that something that's on the roadmap? You're looking to have a product that you can deploy?
What that means is, and this is true with a number of Teradata partners, security and non-security partners. When Vantage is released, every time there is a new drop of a Vantage version, it contains a bill of materials for itself, and all of the new additions that are going to be inside of a Vantage tenant on a deployment of that version. So if you had 2.4.4, 2.4.5 is going to be a little bit different. And Automatic, as are many other partners, is in a queue for eventual down the road hopeful release of the ability to put the vault inside of a Vantage tenant. Now that has not occurred yet, but it's only because that evaluation has not occurred yet because products, it's at a particular place in product management's queue.
So stay tuned.
Yes.
So stay tuned. Doesn't mean you can't use the product though. Right, if you put the vault on-prem or in a VCP, isolated or unisolated, you still have a great deployment. You know, our theory is, you know, if you put it really close to the database inside of Vantage Tenant, we might get a little bit more juice out of it. But it will still work very well as Matthew has described.
Yeah, take that a little bit further, and let's say you're across all the different countries in EU as well as the US. You could put a vault in France for the French customers, a vault in Switzerland for the Swiss customers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the main big database where all the business data is got everybody and all the data, but all the identity resides in that country of origin. And so you can move the rest of the data anywhere you like.
So there's times where you would want to put it in a Vantage tenant, and there's times where you wouldn't.
Absolutely, customer choice.
Customer choice. That's what we'll end up with.
So with that, thank you very much for being here, and a big round of applause for the three presenters here.